All right, well, I'm going to share the screen. Let's see. There we go. I wish there was a better way to get right to the slideshow so you don't have to see all the other stuff, but I haven't figured it out yet. Anyway, as many of you know, the Dona Arts Council has been in Las Cruces for, well, and in Dona County for 50 years. We're celebrating 50 years this year of the Dona Arts Council. And I don't know how many different locations it's been in, but when I first became aware of it, it was in a little sort of an old storefront area on Compost Street. I understand that it's also had an office in the Bank of the West building at one point. And of course, most people know it from probably its longest stretch when it was in the Rio Grande Theater. We then from there moved to a location in Mesilla for 3 years. And then most recently in September, we moved to the location at West Amador. Are you all seeing your faces as well as the screen? Am I blocking what you see, or are you just seeing the whole thing?
We're just seeing your slides and yourself at this point.
Okay, I just didn't want to be blocking part of what's there. Anyway, this is our new location. Formerly was the Bank of America building, and before that it was SunWest Bank. And so we are thrilled. It's adjacent to the Arts and Cultural District. It's right on Amador, so lots of people see it. It's close to a lot of the things going on in downtown Las Cruces, and of course that makes it very central to the whole county. We think of ourselves as a regional organization, but we've had a really good response to people coming in, seeing the gallery, seeing the new location. So we think of what we're doing as reaching a broader spectrum of the community through a wider range of the arts. Certainly at the Rio Grande Theater, a large emphasis was put on the performing arts, but there was also a gallery there. It was not nearly as extensive as what we've got now. But the idea was that we were reaching out to the performing arts as well as to the visual arts, and encompassing things like writing. I like to say, we're trying to cover it all. We've got one of our Artists of the Year. We're calling this the 2021, the Year of the Artist, sort of a way of coming out of the pandemic. We're hoping to honor the first responders and those people as well. But in 2021, the Year of the Artist, each month we're honoring a different artist in a different field. So back in February, we honored Russell Hernandez, who is with Salud, and we felt that his culinary arts were something to be celebrated. We have lots of culinary artists, and of course artists in a variety of fields here. So we're trying to not cover every single one, but sort of provide examples of the wide array. Currently in our gallery, you can see those of you familiar with this when it was the Bank of America and before that SunWest Bank, there were a string of teller stations there on where we now have a gallery wall. And currently on that gallery wall has been a very well received show by Wayne Suggs. Wayne is an extraordinary photographer here in Las Cruces. If you're familiar at all with what he does, he will sort of decide what he's trying to capture and go where he thinks he can capture it. But he's been known to put lights in abandoned buildings or set things up to capture these incredible moments. But he will wait hours. He will go at 2 in the morning. He will do all kinds of things. He'll wander until he finds just the right spot. And so we have had a terrific response to his art being in the gallery, but we also know that he's been getting a great response across the state from businesses, from private, personal people collecting. But his works are like really, they've been compared to fine paintings. They're really just not your typical photographs. So I hope you can come in and take a look at those. In our Stazuski gallery, we have Noelle Sandino. She does these prints that are very unique and wonderful. So it's a smaller gallery and a smaller show, but we have both of those running concurrently. We wanted to do Wayne for 2 months. Wayne wanted to do 2 months in a row. And so we were able to wrangle a spot in the Stazuski Gallery for him next month. So his big things and his big show are in the big gallery in June, but in July he'll be in the Stazuski Gallery where Noel Sandino's things are at the moment. We continue, of course, we have not yet been able to have a chamber concert in our new gallery, in our new location, but we are looking forward to doing that because that was something we really enjoyed having El Paso Pro Musica come up, the classical drinking series at our last location. I liked the acoustics because they were sharp and echoed a lot. The musicians, not so much. So we have more carpet in this location. I think from what I've heard from the musicians, they're looking forward to playing there. But it's a great space. We're looking forward to having a really nice crowd when we get to have some performances here. We're also, of course, working on programs for our young people. And this summer, we have something that Jordan and Marion Woolley started a number of years ago. Marion, unfortunately, is no longer with us, but Jordan still is. He and I know each other from swimming, but he also is a big supporter of children seeing that there are career art paths. And so he and Marion started this program called Career Art Paths. It's a summer camp. We've already got somewhere between 20 and 30 young people signed up for that one. The Missoula Children's Theater, which is out of Missoula, but they send 2 young people down to sort of do these things. It's going to be Sleeping Beauty this year. And the theater, they're of course observing all of the pandemic protocols, but we've got about 40 young people signed up for that one already. And then the Opera Storytellers Camp was something that was started basically in conjunction with the Santa Fe Opera Company. And they used to send people from the Santa Fe Opera down to work with young people each year. But they stopped doing that, but we continued the program here locally. And we have a delightful young lady who teaches at Centennial High School who's going to be doing the program this year. And so the young people get to write their own opera, get to perform in it, and basically it's helping young people appreciate what the opera is, because a lot of us, I mean, I've struggled. I've gone to some great performances at the Santa Fe Opera, but I would be hard pressed to say it's my favorite form of art. But I think if we help people appreciate it, they can certainly enjoy a lot there. One thing I'm extremely proud of is that this year we did something with the Space Festival, and it's called the Dona Discovery Arts Integration Project. And it is starting to receive national attention. It's certainly been, we did it with one group of 3rd graders at Monte Vista Elementary School, and they just loved it. Their teacher was ecstatic. The kids were so excited. And of course, it ties together the science, technology, engineering, and math subjects, but brings them also into context with the art. So wonderful, wonderful program there. Lots of ecstatic responses from the teachers involved, but also the young people. So we're hearing from other schools who want to do it next year. We've gotten a Devastali grant to help us get it out to other schools next year, and we're starting to get national attention for that. So that's really exciting. And of course, ties space in with art. And please raise your hand if you've got a question or a comment anytime going through this. I don't mean to just run right through it, but if you have anything you want to comment on or ask about, please let me know. And then finally, for the young people, one of the things that we've been doing for a number of years is working with young people who are with families at the domestic abuse center there at La Casa. Basically, of course, they're in this difficult situation where sometimes nobody knows they're there. And certainly during the COVID situation, we had to be very careful about how arts activities were done. This can be very cathartic, very therapeutic for them. in general, we have been trying to use the arts as sort of a healing and therapeutic type of thing. So if you go to our website, which is DAARTS.org, if you go to our website, there are a number of art pieces that people have submitted to be included in our artist response to the COVID virus. And some of them are really, I mean, they're just a wide range of responses. But some of them are really very, very unusual photographs, drawings, pen and ink, paintings. I think there might even be one or two sculptures. So there's, I'll have to go back and look. But anyway, it's been really, really exciting to see people responding to that, thinking in terms of how do we move on. Something, I don't know if you all are familiar with Nan Rubin's show on Ketal, but she has a show at 8 o'clock on Tuesday mornings called Café con Leche. And she asked me if I would take the show for a month and take that show and basically talk about the arts, talk about the Art Council, talk about the Arts and Cultural District, talk about the Renaissance Arts Fair, and the artist response to the COVID virus. So we've got a lot of these topics. I'll be doing that 5 of the mornings starting June, June, I think it's 12th. Would that be right? No, June 14th, or no, June 15th. Anyway, that will be something that I'm going to enjoy doing. I've already got my guests lined up. And so if you want to check that out, it's at 101.5, I believe, on Tuesday mornings at 8. Anyway, we've got something that started, it was started at the Holy Cross Retreat 50 years ago, the same year that the Arts Council started, was the Holy Cross Retreat craft fair. And so it started then, it eventually morphed into the Renaissance Arts Fair and was taken over by the Dona Ana Arts Council. So the name changed, the location changed, but we last year, of course, had to make that a virtual event. And it's such a iconic event in Las Cruces. We're going to be able, for our 50th anniversary of the Renaissance Arts Fair, we're going to be able to do it back at Young Park this year. And so we're looking at some of the old posters, and we're looking at, okay, we're going to be not only celebrating 50 years of the Renaissance Arts Fair, but 500 years ago, the Renaissance was really in high gear, especially in Italy. But we think here in Las Cruces and Dona Ana County, in our part of the world, we also have to acknowledge that there was a lot happening in the arts and things 500 years ago on the other side of the Atlantic. So we're going to be trying to tie in some of what we know about 500 years ago on this side of the Atlantic, as well as 500 years ago on the other side of the Atlantic. So I included, this is an Aztec throne stone piece, and we're going to work on incorporating that using the central figure, the circle, as part of our 50 in our poster. So you have to watch for that. We haven't actually finalized that yet, but we're working on it. And as I mentioned earlier, we're looking at 2021 being the year of the artist. We got proclamations from the county and 4 of the communities, municipalities here. And so lots of support for what we're doing with that. You can see 2 sculptures in front of our location. One, the one to the right is by Suzanne Kane, and the one to the left is by John Northcutt. Suzanne asked us if she could put another one up next to the building. She has one that's a little more 2-dimensional. And so we're going to be we were saying, and there at the bottom is the website address, DAARTS.org. Lots of information there about the programs I've talked about and other things. We have an artist directory. We have a little bit of the history. I know I mentioned the Rio Grande Theater. That was one of those things where the theater was for one thing, back when I first facade. It was covered up with metal. So what you saw didn't look like what it looks like now and what it looked like back when it was first built in 1926. So I went and saw movies there, but it was basically falling apart in the late 1990s. And through a very generous gift of two of the daughters of the Burns family, and a whole lot of hard work on a lot of other people's part, it was half of it was donated and half of it was purchased, and a whole lot of millions of dollars went into getting it fixed up so that performances and events and things like that could happen in there. So the Arts Council really had a lot to do with that. The city now has it and is planning on doing, what is it that they're going to have there? What was it? Harvey. The play Harvey is slated to be there, and I think starting July 1st. So they're planning on opening back up July 1st and being able to do that. And I'm thrilled that that theater is going to be getting public use again. But it was designed originally as a movie house. And so when the Arts Council got it, they had to take out a few rows of seats to create a stage with enough depth to have the stage in front and the back stage behind it. And we're very fortunate to have that building still in place. It's a two-story adobe structure, despite the brick facade. Behind the brick is adobe, and to the best of my knowledge, it's the only two-story adobe movie theater remaining in the whole United States. So it's got a number of claims, and the Arts Council is thrilled to have been part of bringing it back into use. But anyway, if you've got questions about that or other things that we're doing, I'll be more than happy to answer them. I'll take this off of the screen share. Let's see, stop share, so we can look at each other and talk.
So anybody got questions or comments for Craig? Go ahead, Charlie.
I think you're muted, Charlie.
Yeah, you're muted.
Okay, hopefully that works.
There you go.
Out of complete ignorance, I've always loved the arts fair, and you mentioned that it has absorbed the crafts fair, and I don't really know the difference between arts and crafts. And is the Dona Arts Fair, will it be including crafts if they are different from art?
Well, and I didn't mention, and I'm sorry for that omission, we have the Las Cruces Arts Fair typically in March. And this last year in 2020, we just squeaked that in right before the pandemic hit. And so we had a great arts fair then. In 2021, in March of this year, we did not. We didn't try to do it. The convention center wasn't open, but we try very hard. It is a juried show. If you are talking about the Las Cruces Arts Fair in March, it is a juried show. So we do try to bring in a range of arts, and some of them, of course, require more manual dexterity or things like that. And so some people might refer to them as crafts. Now at the Renaissance Arts Fair, which did grow out of the Holy Cross Crafts Fair, there is a mix of crafts and arts. So you will find soaps and candles and stained glass and things created with feathers, all kinds of things, along with people dancing and doing demonstrations and those kinds of things. So it's a much more, the Renaissance Arts Fair is a more interactive, if you will. There's a children's section, there's a drinking area. Well, I'm sorry, there's a tavern, but there's a stage set up for performances, those kinds of things. And there are a lot of different things going on. There's a little of that happening at the Las Cruces Arts Fair in March, but not nearly as much. And it really is much more oriented to finer art. So it is a juried show, but we have people like Amado Peña coming and that kind of stuff, or they have typically in the past. Does that answer your question, Charles?
Great, yes, sir, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, David.
Thanks again, Mr. Smith, for being here. And your presentation was really interesting. And a quick comment. My wife and I are retirees. We could have relocated any place in the country, and one of the reasons that we found Las Cruces so inviting to us is that it had a vibrant art scene for a small community. So you're a real resource to the city and the region. So thank you for that. I was just wondering, when is what are the plans for reopening for performing arts at the downtown location?
Well, we're basically waiting for the governor and the Department of Health to say that, I mean, at this point, if you've been vaccinated, you can come into our gallery without wearing a mask. But we do not have the okay from the governor yet to have performances. We basically have been planning for the Renaissance Arts Fair, assuming that by November, things will be open and okay. We had to do that just because if we don't, we will in no way be ready for November. On the, we've been talking, of course, with Jim Shearer, who did the classical drinking program. I haven't gotten in contact with the El Paso Pro Musica people yet, but we're just sort of hanging loose, hoping that by August or September, we'll be able to do that, but we just don't have any solid plans yet. We're hoping people will get themselves vaccinated and that New Mexico gets into a really good place as far as the pandemic so that we can comfortably do that. But at this point, we just don't have an okay yet to go forward. That's an excellent question. I wish I had a solid answer for you.
Yeah, I got the answer I expected. So maybe not the one I was hoping for, but the answer I expected. A quick follow-up about the art show at the convention center. Are you and planning for that, or are you on hold for that as well?
We're expecting to be able to do that in March of 2022. We had to go out on a limb, even though the city won't let us reserve Young Park yet. We had to go out on a limb to reserve, not to reserve, but to plan for the Renaissance Arts Fair happening in November. And basically we've got first dibs on Young Park with the city, but they're not taking any reservations yet. So as soon as we're kind of certain that things will be open and we'll be able to do that, then basically we'll be pretty absorbed with the Renaissance Arts Fair. But I would say around November, we should be pretty much on track to do the March Arts Fair as well. I will say that, you were talking about how you all chose to come to Las Cruces. I give a lot of credit to the art program and the different programs at NMSU. They really have turned out some exceptional talent, my mother being one of them. But from NMSU, we really do get the new Devastali Hall and the art gallery there, and certainly a lot of other performances in the different venues there, and the young people coming out of those programs really helped Las Cruces be in that place that you're describing. So we're very thankful for that.
Anyone else?
Paul, this is Dave Rice. Thank you for the presentation. It's very informative as a new arrival here. You mentioned a youth program directed toward La Casa, the domestic abuse shelter. Do you have any effort which would use art in therapy for the adults that are involved in that shelter?
We haven't done that yet, but I think that as sort of an outgrowth of what we've been trying to do with the artist response to COVID, it's not exactly a direct correlation, but I think that you have an excellent point as far as how the arts can be used in that way. And we do have adult art programs. I failed to mention that we have a Feed Your Mind series with art history and some of those kinds of things. That we took to Zoom, we took online, and we had an Artrageous, we have workshops and Artrageous program. And so the workshop and the Artrageous program are about making art. Neither one of them is geared specifically to adults suffering from some of the situations that you're describing. But hopefully anyone feeling like they might need something like that might get some of that kind of help from doing the arts. I know a lot of artists over the years have certainly used art in that way. But I think as far as having a specific program, you bring up a good point. It's something we should pursue.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Anyone else? Gotta be somebody.
Yeah,
I,
there's a hand waving.
As
Oh, yeah,
Eileen,
there we go.
well, I know it's not under the Arts Council, but are they still working on the Arts District?
Yes.
Still
Uh, Basically, a community has to have an arts council and a downtown improvement organization. And so Las Cruces has both of those, and the city government willing to pursue an arts and cultural district. And so we do have that. I actually serve as the chair of the Arts and Cultural District Coordinating Council. So thank you for bringing that up. We are looking at a number of things. Currently, we've been working on some gateways, designs, and getting those installed, and some signage and some lighting. I also was pushing really hard for the city to start working on the Amador Hotel again. And I'm very gratified to see that they have been doing that. If you've never seen the inside of that building, it's not a grand hotel by any stretch, like you might see in New York or Chicago or San Francisco. But what it was sort of a cultural hub for Las Cruces for close to 100 years. And so we're hoping that that will be one of the things that can be brought back online, get it historically preserved. They're looking at a time period of the 1930s, which is when it had sort of a territorial style, the coping around the top, the white columns. It sort of got morphed into a Pueblo style at a later point. But anyway, it's had several different looks if you've seen any of the old photographs of the Amador Hotel. And I'm looking forward to us getting it back in shape. We're looking at maybe some nonprofits being in that location. We actually talked about the Arts Council going in there at one point, but we needed to move sooner than 2 to 5 years from now.
Yeah.
And so we're hoping that will give it a new lease on life. Also looking at getting the Museum of Art moved into the old post office building, which is currently the municipal courts. There on the east side of the plaza downtown. And that's long been one of my goals, is to take that iconic structure, one of the few that didn't get torn down in the late 1960s, early 1970s. 70% of the buildings downtown were torn down. And so that, I mean, it doesn't look particularly Las Cruces or Southwest, but it is an iconic structure from over 100 years ago. And I think it'll be a great location for an interactive museum of art, where we can actually have a permanent collection on display, as well as galleries with things moving in and out. Where it currently has a parking lot, I'd love to see there be a small sculpture garden, and at the north end of that parking lot, maybe an annex where there could be classes and public restrooms. People need those on the plaza, but some practical aspects. So I've been pushing for a long time for the Museum of Art to go into that location. It's being studied. The Arts and Cultural District actually put some money forward from money we got from the state to do a study on moving the Museum of Art into that location. And the city actually has some money set aside to do that, not nearly enough to do it, but getting it into that location, even if they don't modify the current building that much, they'll have more space for the permanent collection and the changing collections to be there, and help provide a historic structure with a purpose for going on. But we've got the largest arts and cultural district in the whole state of New Mexico. And that's because it not only includes the core of downtown, but it also goes over to Mesquite Street, which is part of the route of the historic Camino Real. And so looking at some of the galleries over there being included, some of the history on that street. I always like to refer to the fact that when the Spanish came through, and before they named it the Camino Real, there was trade between northern New Mexico and central Mexico. There are feathers and examples of chocolate coming up from central Mexico to the northern part of New Mexico. So there had to have been trade routes in place. It makes sense for the Spanish to probably have followed one of them getting north when they came through and did, what's often referred to as La Entrada, which has a whole lot of controversial aspects to it. But I often say, we've got to respect everyone who's here, welcome and include everyone who's here, but let's start with the people who were first here. Let's make sure we're honoring them and then follow through with everyone else who's here. So I try to make sure we point out that when the Spanish came through, there was a group called Manso. The Spanish called them Manso here in the Las Cruces area. And so I'm looking at including more. Their current group is Pito Manso Tiwa because they got mixed with the other two groups. But I'm looking at including them more in some of our discussions about the Arts and Cultural District because their culture is very much a part of what we've got here now. Any other questions about that, or?
I know nothing about what did you call them again? The Mansu?
Well, the Spanish came through, and of course the Spanish in their as was their wont, came through and decided that the name for this group should be Manso, which meant gentle, friendly, welcoming. And there are other versions of the story, but basically this group was here, living in this area. Maybe they were migratory. Certainly the Mogollon had come through this area. There are pit houses, things going back thousands of years. And they think that the Manso might have been descended from the Mogollon. But we just don't, we didn't get a lot of that history written down. And so we're not really clear on a lot of it. But when the Spanish were expelled in the 1680 revolt, the Pueblo revolt, they came south through this area, bringing the Tiwa and the Piro with them. And so they also then collected the Manso and ended up down around El Paso. And so these three different tribes were separate at first, but then they started intermingling and intermarrying. And then some of the descendants of that intermingling and intermarrying, some people went back up north to where their original tribes had been, but some of them came back to Las Cruces area. So we have, I think, three different groups called Piro Manso Tiwa. And the Piro Manso Tiwa have one group seeking federal recognition as a tribe, and two other groups have sort of split off from them. So unfortunately, the three groups, or actually four groups, are not always working together, and I think that's a real shame. But I'm trying to be as inclusive as possible so that we can hear their voices and include them in the things that we're doing.
Wow.
So if you ever hear anybody referring to the PMT, that's the shortened version of Piro Manso Tiwa.
I can remember. I'm sorry.
No. Believe me, there are a whole lot of people who have no idea that there were ever any indigenous people in this part of the world, and there definitely were. We have archaeological records of that, but unfortunately, we don't have a whole lot of historical records.
Yep. Anyone else? Oh, yes, go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything recently about the Fountain Theater. Do you know the status of that? And is it part of your council, or is
it is not? It's actually owned by Tom and Jareen Hutchinson. They have the La Posta restaurant. And so they bought it, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. And they've been allowing the Film Society to continue to show films there. And so it's an excellent opportunity to get to see independent films and things of local interest and that sort of thing. So I love the fact that the Fountain Theater is available to us here locally. It's not associated with us. We certainly support and encourage it, I know somebody who's been the chair of their organization. I should check with her and see when they're planning on opening. I know that some of the regular movie theaters have started to open back up, but you know, given some of the restrictions, it's so expensive to open up a theater and only have like 25% of your seats being able to be used. And the Fountain Theater typically fills up completely when they are operational. You know, the tables at the back and the regular theater seats at the front, I've rarely gone in there when it wasn't packed. So yeah, I join you. I hope they're able to open soon, but I don't know specifically what they're planning on doing, but I'll try to find out.
Go ahead. Anyone else?
Go for it.
So I don't want to dominate this,
Oh,
but
no, that's fine.
this is really interesting and you know, warms my heart. So you mentioned, I really appreciate the fact that you're defining art broadly to include the culinary arts and not just the visual arts and the performing arts. You mentioned programs for writers. What's on the docket for that? Could you say some more about that component of your portfolio?
Sure. And that's more of the Arts and Cultural District portfolio at the moment, but we've had a generations writing project just concluded recently, and we had people paired up to write, you know, about hope. And so that was the theme this year. So we're looking forward to doing it again next year. But we had no idea we were going to have such a huge response. And so we had this giant response. We had to basically pick and choose down to 4 pairs of people. We paired them up, but we had our sheriff was one of the winners. We had a state legislator. We had several other people involved who are you know, highly visible in our community, along with some people who I'd never heard of before, but who submitted things that were really, really exciting to get to read. So that's one thing. Also, Denise Chavez has been one of our award winners in the past, and she did the Border Book Festival. You know, used to be in the Fritzy grocery store in Mesilla. There were a number of people who came through from after the Civil War. So it's sort of like some of our prominent Hispanic families in the Valley here have some very German and English sounding names because the soldiers came through, settled down in the Mesilla Valley, started families, and basically their families continued to marry into Hispanic families. And so it is sort of funny sometimes when you encounter someone and their you know, first language was Spanish and their family has a lot of Hispanic traditions, but their last name is Fritzy or Barncastle or I forget some of the other ones at the moment. Well, Taylor, but you know, they're just. But it's an interesting aspect to Las Cruces.
Why don't we have a book festival?
Well, what Denise has done, I don't know if you're familiar with her new location. She has a great spot, and it's on, I believe it's Esperanza Street. So it's just east of the Arts and Cultural District. It's in an old adobe house, and she has an amazing array of books. Of course, she herself is a writer, but she has an amazing array of books from just about every kind of conceivable source. And if you go in, she will treat you to tea. She will chat with you. She will show you vinyl record albums that she's got, or prints, or things like that. But her love, of course, is the written word. She was actually one of the things that she did during the crisis, or the situation when we had people seeking asylum here in Las Cruces, was she would bring a pile of books to the Peace Lutheran Church. And I saw her one day. It was just sort of this sort of iconic moment. There was a light shining down from a skylight or a clerestory window or something like that. It was hitting the table where she was sitting with a bunch of young people. And there was this pile of books. And I thought, that's Denise. That's Denise at work. You know, a lot of those young people, whatever else they'd gone through, their experiences in Las Cruces, I think this community really stepped up and did a marvelous thing, helping those families on their way and young people with books and all kinds of things. I know it was a controversial subject at the time, but we had 17,000 people come through Las Cruces, and this community stepped up in an amazing way. So I'm very proud of the way the people in Las Cruces really helped out in a situation that was so dire.
Yeah, no question.
I was thinking of something like every 2 years, Silver City has
Southwest Festival.
the Southwest, well, it used to be called the Southwest Festival of the Written Word, or Tucson's is huge. And,
Well,
you know, why we could do something like that.
I absolutely think that that's something that comes into the purview of the Arts Council when we are talking about the broad spectrum of people being involved in the wide range of arts. And certainly that's something that I plan to talk to Denise about, is how we
Yes.
take what she's been doing and bring that. But we also have been, we're working on sort of streamlining what we do, because we're down to 3 people at our staff, and we're trying to make the most of what we can do with what we've got. And the pandemic has certainly made that more necessary than it was. But yeah, I'm absolutely on board for us taking the written word. I happen to write probably more than I do a lot of other things, and it is definitely an art form, definitely very much part of what we consider the arts. My background is in architecture, so I also consider that part of the arts as well.
Yes.
Yeah, that was my earlier question. How did you get interested in the arts?
Well, 2 things. One, my mother, my mother's Joanne Smith. She's a fairly well-known local artist. And so she, basically, I saw her making art pretty much my whole life. I wanted to be an architect from an early age, but she would, in addition to, getting me a drafting table and books about Frank Lloyd Wright, she would also enroll me in art classes and stuff. So I have that experience. And then I went to a really kind of progressive architecture program at Texas A&M. One might not expect that, but it was called environmental design. And basically the freshman year was really very much about art. And so we were approaching design from the standpoint of what are the aesthetics, what are the pieces that come together. And so I've always looked at architecture as, yes, it's about flow. It's about how you get from point A to point B and what your experiences are in those different areas. But it's also about being somewhat sculptural, 3D art. And I'm not the biggest fan of what Frank Gehry does. Some of it's quite sublime and beautiful, and some of it's a bit choppy for me. But I have seen architectural efforts over the years that inspire me. To look at it as tactile, tangible, experiential art. So yeah, that was my background. I taught then for 20 years in Austin, and then I came back. I wanted to pursue my architecture career here locally, and I got involved in the downtown Las Cruces partnership. From there, I got into politics, and I served on the city council for 8 years. And I was a big supporter of the arts during that time. And so when I ran for mayor unsuccessfully, I was approached by people from the Arts Council, and they wanted to talk to me. I was like, well, I've only got 2 weeks left in office. I'm not sure I can help you a whole lot, because I thought they were going to ask for some help with something. And they wanted to offer me the job of executive director. And I was like, well, let me check with my wife, but it sounds good to me. So it's really been a very natural progression. Very much something that I see the value in. A lot of times people say, well, you know, they're cutting the arts program at the schools, or they're doing such and such. And I see the arts as a way of reaching, much like the Dona Discovery program has, of reaching people in various fields. They might not become artists, but they can certainly connect the arts to these other fields. And from the standpoint of the creative economy, New Mexico, you know, doesn't have a great track record for attracting industry or you know, having people make lots of money. You know, not Steve Jobs, Bill Gates and his co-founders started Microsoft in Albuquerque, but then they went back to you know, Seattle. So we've got some opportunities there, but we also have the opportunity with the arts. We have a history in our state with the arts, and I think locally, as you pointed out, Las Cruces has a lot going on that really helps move that forward and helps us. I frankly think that we're going to see, I mean, I love driving by the fields and seeing people working in the fields and seeing the crops harvested and those kinds of things. But I don't imagine it's going to be that long before that's all done robotically. We have autonomous vehicles coming. And so a lot of people driving trucks, construction, a lot of things that we normally take for granted now are human-centered jobs are going to be transitioning. And so I think education is going to remain one of those things where you're going to be pretty much human-centric. You know, medicine, even though there are, you know, surgery can be done remotely with some robotic arms and things like that these days. But, you know, education, medicine, politics, okay, but, and the arts, whether it's performing arts or visual arts or culinary arts, I think really still come down in huge ways to the human element. And so I do think that we have a future there with Spaceport America getting ready to launch more flights into space. We're going to be, at least for a lot of people, their first arrival in New Mexico. And so we're going to be seeing people coming through here. And one of the ways that we can, you know, welcome guests is showing them what we have in the way of the arts, as well as demonstrating our own pride in our own community and our own sense of worth in ourselves. So those are all important things that I think tie back to the arts. And I find it's easier for me to look at the arts as key to those things than a lot of other things that people might hook into.
It looks to me like New Mexico State University has done a number of things. They have a recent building they've set up for arts, and you interact with them a lot?
Yes, Marissa Sage, who is the director of the art gallery at the Devastali Hall, is part of our Arts and Cultural District Coordinating Council. And she is a past board member of the Arts Council. So she's very much involved. Of course, when I was on the city council, I interacted with President Floros and Chancellor Arvizu and a number of other people at NMSU, and we continue to want to have that be an inclusive part of what we do.
Anyone else? Getting close to the end of our program here. Somebody has a comment? Question? Well, thank you very much, Gregory. This has been very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for inviting me. We welcome, you know, you all are certainly welcome to come down to the Arts Council. Welcome to send us questions, comments about things. I'll be happy to come back if you want me to talk on this or another subject at another time. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's see, next week, God, I don't have my list here. I know we got a good speaker. I can't remember who it is. Anyway, we'll have a roundtable next Sunday
Okay.
with a very talented speaker. I just don't know offhand who it is.
Well,
So goodbye, everyone.
hey, thanks, Paul. Thanks so much for doing this each week. And to Charlie and, the other people on the roundtable committee. It's been wonderful to be able to keep this going during our shutdown time.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to get back in the library soon.
Yeah.
Be nice.
All right, thank
Okay,
you.
thanks.
Have a great afternoon.
You bet.
Bye.